This is our workshop we put on annually for those folks that are anticipating retirement within the next 5 years, and we are very glad that you're here with us this morning. The plan for the day is that we're going to have a presentation from some wonderful folks. Bob, he is here from Westpath. Keith is here representing the board this morning, and they both have information I'm sure you're going to find very interesting as you plan your retirement. And then around noon, we're going to break for lunch, and I'm going to ask you to make room because we're going to have some folks that are new to ministry who are also going to be joining us for lunch. So every seat is going to be used, friends. Any questions before we begin? If not, let me introduce you to some folks. Most of you know Keith Rockwell. Keith is the chair of our education committee. Bob Christoffel is here from Westpath. Did I pronounce it correctly? Oh, woo! Names, folks, names. Ted is also here from the board. He is in our executive committee. He's the secretary. And Stephanie Rupert, who's our vice chair, is also going to be joining us shortly. And so we're going to be here throughout the day, most certainly throughout lunch. So if you have any questions, feel free to pull us aside, and we'd be happy to answer anything. And if we don't know the answers, we'll find them for you. Would you join me in an attitude of prayer? Most good and gracious God, as we gather together this day, Lord, we just ask for your wisdom. We ask for ears to hear, hearts to understand, oh God, and that you give us the questions you want us to ask. And we ask this all in the most blessed name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
I greet you in the name of our risen Lord Jesus the Christ. It is good to be with you today. I have the opportunity as the Benefits and Education Chair to share with you some information from the board. Now, we are in transition, in case you haven't been aware of that. We do not currently have a conference benefits officer. That's why the executive committee is doing this. And I get the privilege of being with you as a representation of the board. Michelle will be my helper in back in case I say anything that I'm not supposed to say. And so she has me on a short leash. But I need to work with you for this time, so let's get started. My sisters and brothers, normally you know I'm lighthearted and fun-loving. But for the next 4 minutes, I'm going to be really serious with you because I need to be. I'm probably going to not meet every one of your expectations in my time with you together. And the reason I'm not going to do that is because we cannot predict the future. We cannot tell you exactly what will happen. The discipline makes it clear that the Board of Pensions is to grant retirees who are full-time. Is there anyone in here that's not full-time? Then let me be clearer. At retirement, you must be in a full-time appointment to receive health benefits as supplements. Okay? Just so there's no misunderstanding. I will check with my brain trust. How was that?
Excellent.
Thank you. So if you want it, that may be a consideration in your life appointment. You must be in a full-time appointment. That's the first thing. You must abstain for all those who are full-time. You must sustain your full-time appointment till retirement. You can't go back, or you won't be eligible for the benefits. But Keith, I have over 40 years and you got to retire full-time status. Okay, are we clear? Okay, all right. Now, the understanding is how the discipline says we grant you access. We resource your retirement if you are 65 and eligible for Medicare. And if you pay the supplement for Part B. Okay? If you don't pay the supplement for Part B to the government, you're not eligible for the resourcing that we have available for you. Some people have told me over my years, and by the way, I love being the chair of education and that. I used to be Michelle. I love being the education person because I get to share all these things. Pastors have told me in the past, I don't want to pay for Part B of my Medicare. Okay, that's fine, but we can't give you our resources. You must pay the government Part B in your Medicare in order to have these resources available to you. Now, those resources are based on years of service. Now, folks, let me tell you something. Today, tomorrow, you should go on your benefits access. Right, Bob?
Yes.
Not Tom or anybody. You should go on your I had a brain glitch yesterday. You should go on your benefits access and make sure that your years of service are accurate. Because there are a lot of pastors who have told me over the past 4 years, they don't get my years of service right. Well, you need to check right now to make sure that your years of service are right, not pension credits. Hear me, there's a difference. Use Keith Rockwell as an example. I was so old I was ordained twice. Anybody else ordained twice? Okay. I was ordained in seminary. I was appointed then to go to school. I appealed that to Westpath, then the general board, and said that my appointment to school counted as a service year. They said, yes, it does. So I picked up an extra service year, which is why I can walk with 40 years when I'm 64, which will happen in 2026. You need to check your service years to make sure they're accurate. It's on your Benefits Access website. Bob wants to say something.
In addition, in your white envelopes, you're going to see a CSR clergy service record, so you could glance at it, don't be distracted by it, but that's what you would have on benefit access. So just make sure that looks nice and accurate.
Right, because that's important. Because if we continue with the methodology we used this year to fund the supplement to Medicare, we will use service years as a guide. You notice what key word I said, if. I don't know what the future holds. I can tell you that's been our policy. I can tell you that at every meeting we review it. I can tell you at every meeting we talk about it, because we always have to stay on top of this. CF&A will tell you. If you don't, I can put you in contact with CF&A, that we, the Board of Pensions, as we resource retirees, are the largest part of the budget. So we are constantly in conversation about that. Now, I quoted to you the discipline that we only have to grant you access, and that can take any form at once. Now I'm going to quote to you Wesley. And maybe you can help me in quoting Wesley to me. So let me see if you can finish this for me. Let's see. Give all you can, right? And the second one is make all you can. And what's the third one? Save all you can. Folks, let me put it to you as bluntly as I can, because I'm your educator. If you are here at this meeting, if you are 5 years from retirement, you need to be setting aside intentional monies for your health care in the future. You can do that through an HSA, or you can do that through a bank account, but whatever you do, you better start doing it now. Because there may be a time that our resources will not match the cost of the supplements. You have a chance right now, because everybody have told me through my years, I cannot believe some of you are here. I don't believe I'm that old. But you have told me, well, the Board of Pensions never gives us warning, never tells us, about what we should be doing. I'm telling you right now, start saving for your health portion of your retirement. Put it away, designate it either in an HSA or in a bank account. Because we don't know what the future holds. And that's my serious part this morning of this session for you. Because I am you. Do you know Denny Hummel? Denny Hummel got so upset with me yesterday because I announced my retirement date. I'm going to retire in 2026 or 2027. I'm almost you, 5 years before retirement. Tina and I have already had those conversations. You need to have those conversations. You won't get any figures from us today about what could be because I have no clue. But I will give you concepts of what are currently available. I don't know what will be available 5 years from now. So here's how we resourced retirees this year. Oh, by the way, how long's your appointments? Huh? Year to year, right? Okay, great. Do you know retirement? How many of you knew retirement was an appointment? Okay, good. This just in, retirement is an appointment. So how can it be changed? What is it? Appointment? Appointment is year by year. In retirement, resources that provide for your health care supplement in Medicare can be what?
Changed yearly.
There you go. See, we all understand each other. We're good. Mr. Met is getting ready to pitch in the bullpen. I'm just about done. And so I have fun with Bob. He loves the Mets. I love the Pirates. Who's having a better year and a better day? All right.
Keith,
Yes,
may I ask a question?
absolutely. Questions are welcome.
So
Now
if-
I'm done being serious. Go ahead.
Thank you. If we check our own service record and discover we need to make a correction, how do we do that?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. You would have called the CBO, but we can't call a CBO, Conference Benefits Officer, because we don't have one yet. We're working on it. They're just not here yet. So what do? Call Westpath themselves, talk to a benefits person in the pensions office and find out what you have to do to appeal. I know what I had to do, David, to appeal was I had to show them the Conference Journal in West Virginia in which I was appointed to school after my ordination in seminary. Now you're saying, well, where can I get a Conference Journal that far back? Churches are good resources. The archives are good resources in our conference, but if all else fails, Wesleyan Theological School in Washington, D.C. has every single journal from every single conference from the beginning of time. All you have to do is take a day, go down to American University, go to the Wesleyan Theological School Library, and get the journal. Make a copy of your appointment, your name, turn it in and work with the pensions officer at Westpath, and they'll be able to adjust your record. Thank you for the question. Did I answer it?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm on a roll today. And anybody else have a question? You can interrupt me all you want. Yes, Jen.
When you mentioned Medicare Part B.
Yes.
How long do you have to be paying Medicare Part B that last year?
No.
From the time you're 65?
No, you just start when you just make a commitment to start on Medicare Part B when you retire.
So
You
let's
go
set
ahead.
it up. Friends, when you turn 65,
Five,
if
yeah.
you're still an appointment, sign up for A. Government expects that.
Right.
Where your supplement Part B would start is when, if you are over 65 and after your appointment ends.
Right.
After you're appointed to a local church.
Okay? Thank you, Jen. See, the brain trust always helps me, fill in the gaps. Are there others? Okay. I want to share with you a sketch and an outline of what we gave the retirees this year. And how long is the understanding of this, what we gave the retirees? Tell me one more time, and I won't ask you again.
This year.
Great. Okay. We currently work with VIA Benefits. Bob can tell you there's a lot of people who work with VIA Benefits. I'm indebted to Bob because Bob brought these slides from Westpath for me to use, and he has been so open as a Met fan to let a Pirate fan use his computer and use his clicker, and who knows, I can be better today with the clicker. The understanding of the VIA benefits which we gave the retirees this year is the understanding of how we resource your supplement. You will pay for your supplement. You will pay for your supplement. Can I have it deducted from my health pension when I get my pension? Can I have it deducted from my salary? Answer, no. You will get a bill for your supplement. You will pay that bill. We will reimburse you using an HRA. Okay? Now, in that HRA, you must meet the funding requirements of the conference. What's the requirements of this conference? At your retirement, you must be full-time. Okay, that's important. You don't know how many calls I fielded from people crying, and Michelle's fielded the same calls because they didn't understand that. The understanding of who VIA benefits are, and you can read the screen with me, I'm not going to read everything, is basically they are a leading provider of Medicare eligible services for retirees who are on Medicare. And that. It goes with choice, benefit, cost effectiveness. There are 10 plans. When you are going to retire, and you will have a VIA account, you will lay out every single medication you have on a table. You will lay out every doctor you have currently. You will lay out every specialist you have. Name, numbers, and that. How many of you have sleep apnea? I do too. You will lay out all your serial numbers of all your CPAP parts, including your CPAP, and then you will work with VIA for a 2-hour interview. And then after that 2 hours, they will determine which of these plans best fits you. Dave.
May I make a comment?
Absolutely.
I did this for my mother. My mother is a retired clergy spouse.
Uh-huh.
It actually does take 2 hours or more.
Or more, yeah.
And what I didn't understand was I thought that this was sort of an informative consultation and that I would have a period of time to discuss this information with the consultant, with my mother, and then get back to them on her choice. I didn't realize I had to choose at the end of the 2-hour consultation which plan I wanted for my mother. Because I wasn't prepared, I had to then take the information, go back to my mother, and when I called them, I had to start all over again. And it took me another 2-hour plus conversation, and I had to give them all the information all over again.
That's very
Just so you know.
That's very helpful. Thank you, David. I hope you heard that. Better than what I could do. Yes, ma'am, way in the back.
I have a question and maybe I'm not sure if it's another question or a comment.
Okay, okay, make it loud so I can hear because I have old ears.
How soon before your actual retirement date do you have to go through this process?
You will have a window of time when the conference benefits officer puts you on the retirement list, and then that is transferred once it gets out to Evanston. to the Board of Pensions to VIA. And that window of time usually is from this time to now. You have until June 30th, if we are still having this system, to get with VIA. But as Bob will tell me, what will Bob tell me? Do not wait until June 30th to contact VIA. You have until June 30th to contact it, but don't wait.
So this is one of the
Yeah.
reasons, friends, when your DS wants you to give your intention to retire within so many days of annual conference, this is one of the reasons. So that we can resource you and make sure that you have a breadth and a depth of a window in order to be able to do this and have everything be a really smooth transition.
So will we get something from VIA?
Yes, you'll get plenty of materials if this is the system we're still using when you retire. Lee, you wanted to say hi to me, or did you want to say
I
goodbye?
was trying to help get attention from the
Okay.
license.
Now, I still have another question. It's
Go
like
ahead.
when you're retiring, you're gonna be moving, so how can I tell you what doctors I'm going to be having? Because I'm not at the place where I'm gonna be.
That is a fair question, and that is a good question, and you know what you do with your VIA person? You tell them exactly that, and they'll help you with that. Because they'll look up a region where you're retiring, and then they'll give you these choices based upon how they work with that doctor and how they best, can make it best for you in the plan that's selected. There are 10 plans, folks. I'm not gonna tell you which plan to pick. Okay? Because it's specialized for you. That's why you spend 2.5+ hours with them.
So are you telling me that at that point in time, I'm actually gonna be choosing my doctors that I'm going to be working with?
That is a possibility.
Okay.
Because just like certain health, I mean, we're really blessed, right, with our health insurance plan we have from the annual conference. There's a lot of doctors that take it, but that's not true of every plan, right? And so I think that's what he's trying to get at, is A, you would definitely want to tell them where you're moving. But if you have a certain doctor you want to see, it's your primary care you've had for 20 years, and one thing that's important to me is I want to keep that doctor, then you want to tell them that so they make sure the supplement covers that. So as much information as you can get them, the best informed decision you can make.
That's right. Okay, any other questions? Dave?
I have a question.
Sure.
And I know this from last year, if I were to retire and I'm not 65 yet.
I'll get to that.
But your spouse is. I know that from another situation with another clergy person, like they made arrangements to do a single plan for a year, through the annual conference to cover them even though they're retired, like this past year, this happened.
Okay, so I think you're asking two different questions, Dave, so let me try to answer both of them. Friends, currently, your spouse gets covered at the same level you do. Your spouse cannot go on the system before you go.
Right.
So the clergy person, so they're 66 and you're 64, we can't put them on until you turn 65. And so, but they may have coverage from someplace else, right? They may have their own Medicare supplement already or some other options. We just wouldn't be able to pay for that until they switch to VIA when you turn 65. But you're welcome to stay on our health insurance, and Keith will get to that much later. But you cannot, your spouse cannot predate you going on to our system.
Right. Now, folks, let me be serious and clear again, because I get to be the serious and clear one. If you hear that something happened in the past, something happened in the past, my question to you is, do we currently have a CDL? No. Then nothing in the past is relevant.
Well, that's why I raised the question, because it was with the previous.
Right, I understand it, Dave, I understand your point, I just have to be the person, and that says that nothing, okay, because run with me again on this. How many, what's an appointment? Year to year. What's healthcare? Okay, John.
Somewhat related, if you were to go under your wife's insurance for health insurance earlier, and then at 65, do you go back under,
Yes.
the
The short answer is yes, but can I get back to that after I'm done with these beautiful slides?
Sure.
So wait, can we just clarify what you said though, John?
Yeah,
So-
go ahead.
Okay, so let me, yes or no, you 100%, if you retire early, retire before you're 65, and your spouse still has health insurance, you could do that, he's gonna get to that. What you do not wanna do, friends, you can only receive the supplement if you're what? Full-time. Right now, you have to be on our health insurance if you're full-time. So if you say, well, I wanna go on my health insurance, my spouse's health insurance while I'm still serving, that's a no-go. You know, while you're still appointed full-time. We just don't do that within this annual conference. If you are full-time, you are on our health insurance. If you go less than full-time, you say, I want to go 3/4 time so I can be on her health insurance, then you're no longer eligible for the supplement.
Right, because you have, again, I don't mean to be redundant, but you all accuse me of being redundant. And that you have to be full-time at your retirement. You must be. Okay. I'm gonna go on. I'll skip that. But you can see all the people that have networking within VIA currently, and there's a lot of people that does that. You can see all the unique plans, and they are a trusted partner. You can see what VIA can do for us as a church. It stabilizes costs. So that's why we are currently with VIA and that. Okay, now, you can only have someone warm up in a bullpen so long.
Oh, wait.
I'm not
You're not done, right?
I'm not done,
Okay, good.
but I am closing.
Okay. You also talk about FSAs.
Yes, I had that on my list to talk about and that. Okay, back to where we are at. Keith, I want to retire before I'm 65. Keith, I am ready to go right now to retirement.
You read my mind.
That's your Board of Pensions working for you to know what you are thinking. I want to go retire before I'm 65. What can I do? Well, we give you an option. Your option is that you can stay on with the conference health insurance. Yay! But you will be paying the full expense, the full premium. What does that mean? I'm on the PPO 1000. I pay over $19,000 a year for health insurance if I were retired. That's what you're going to pay. You're going to pay that bill quarterly until you reach 65. All right, Keith, because I can pick on Fred. Fred's going to tell me, Keith, I can go out and I can get another insurance for less than $19,000 for me and my spouse. Okie dokie. You can sign a denial form, but guess what? You can't come back until you are 65. But Keith, my beautiful bride, Darlene, I can pick on Darlene too, just lost her job and we don't have any health insurance. We need to come back on the policy, but we're not yet 65. What did I just say?
Do you believe in prayer?
You can't come back. You cannot come back. Hear me. My age, if I was to walk away today, I would have to go 8 years on another person's plan that was at the annual conferences, and if Tina employment stopped or she died, I couldn't come back to the conference. Am I clear?
But you can come back at 65.
You can come back at 65. You can come back at 65. Okay. Now, some of you have FSAs. How many of you have an FSA? Oh, good. This is going to be a good conversation. you currently have a card for an FSA. Now,
What one is that?
flexible savings account. How many, you all still have the people raise your hands, do you still have a flexible savings account? Okay. You will say to yourself, well, the year I retire, I have the entire year to spend that FSA. This is where I get, see, they put me up here because I just get to be the bearer of news. Well, here's my bearer of news, friends. That's not right. You have until June 30th to spend your FSA. But Keith, I just went and had, I was looking for retirement, so I had my knees done on June 30th, and now I try to pay the bill, and my card is dead on July 5th. Your card will die on July 1st. Then you have to manually do that reimbursement. But any expense that your FSA card covers must be occurred from January 1st to June 30th. But Keith, I have heard that past CBOs have said something different. Okay, let me go and remind you again. Do we currently have a CBO? No. Everything that the last CBO said as what? And we're only appointed how many? 1 year at a time. And we have a plan 1 year at a time. But I'm telling you, your FSA ends on June 30th, and you have to manually, for any expense from January to June, you must submit it manually. Now, okay, Keith, can I do the whole card from January to June? Well, I say that's an ethical dilemma. But you know what? I had help yesterday. And the help was, Sean's been really good about taping this, and I've been driving him crazy because I keep moving. But he used to work in the news world, so he's kind of used to moving objects. Marion Hartman was here. You might know her, superintendent, member of the cabinet. She told me that in her mind there's no ethical dilemma. And she almost said the G word, which I had to stop her. Because
grace word.
Yes, grace word. She almost used the GIFT word. And I had to stop her because we get in trouble when we use the GIFT word. So I said, you have to pick another word. And she said, then it's a perk. So in your last year of your FSA, if you want to use that for the whole amount, because you'll get a card in January, and those who have it know it, and the full amount will be on there, even though you haven't paid for it yet. If you want to use it, that's between your God, my God, Marion Hartman, and the word perk. Okay? Is that clear to those who have it? Okay. Folks, Bob's really been good to me, but this is important, and Bob knows it. Are there any other questions that I can wrap up? I will first turn to Michelle, who looks at me and tells me when I've missed something. And so am I good? And have I got with clarity with everything?
I think so.
Oh.
It's all to you first.
Okay. All right. Let me do questions. I'll start with Bill, then I'll go with Jen. Bill.
At the beginning of the year, we'll get a new FSA card. Now, we're paying into that each month, correct?
Correct.
So, is there any rollover function from an FSA to an HSA?
No.
Okay.
That's simple. Jen.
I just wanted to clarify the reimbursement piece, because the way it stands today, I have to have, bless you for talking about saving up, because I have to have the money somewhere to pay for my meds and everything beforehand, and then I'll get reimbursed later.
Right.
Like 30 days later.
Right.
So the savings part that you started out with is particularly important your paycheck. or-
If you live paycheck to paycheck, yes.
Yeah,
You've
yes.
gotta have money in the, now Jen and I have known each other for years, right? We've gone through workshops, right? Because of that observation, may I give you a high five? Because,
Like the high and low.
she's right. If you live paycheck to paycheck, you gotta save, and you gotta do it now. Because you will be reimbursed, we will not advance you money in the HRA plan. You will not be advanced, it's not like an FSA, it's not like anything. You will not be advanced money. And only you know how you live. I have no clue. Okay, any other questions? Going once, going twice. Do you know what Sean's happiest day is? He only has to put up with me for one more workshop. And then get moving. Folks, you've been great. I hope this has been helpful. I'll be right over there. If you need to talk to me for lunch, Michelle will be here. Ted will be here. We're not a CBO, we're just the executive committee of the Board of Pensions doing our best to help you make decisions
And get prepared.
and get prepared. Any other questions? It is my privilege to introduce to you Mr. Met, who's been warming up in the bullpen, but one of the best individuals in making clear to you how you should be preparing for 5 years for your pensions. He's really good, much better than I am. God's blessings and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Again, my official name is Bob Christoffel from Westpath Benefits and Investments, referred to as Mr. Met affectionately. It's my pleasure to be out here today, and yesterday we had a great retirement seminar. I'm going to bring you right up till around 11:50 a.m. if all goes well. But I certainly want to encourage you to ask questions. We had a lot of good questions yesterday. What we're trying to do is prepare you for the process of retirement, which will come at some point. The position I serve at is the manager of benefit education at Westpath, and I lead a team of benefit educators. And as you can imagine, this is our real busy season. Here we are at the end of April already. It literally has flown by. We've done 21 events this month. We had 7 going on at the same time last week alone. So it's been a busy season of microphones and airplanes and rental cars and hotels, but we'll get through it. And then we'll go right into annual conference season. So I am East Coast based, so anytime I could just get in my car and drive somewhere, it's always a good thing. And that's what I'll do this afternoon, just head back to Long Island. We've put together an overview of the different topics we're going to cover this morning, but this is your seminar. And I want to hear your thoughts, your concerns, your questions. A little bit about Westpath. That's our building out in Glenview, Illinois. Formerly, they were in Evanston. They moved there about 8 or 9 years ago. I've been with the general board in Westpath now for 5 years, and it's gone quick. I started out as a benefit educator and really joined an all-star team of benefit educators, CFPs and CPAs, and really great, experienced people, great team.
I was wondering if you could speak louder or turn up the volume on your set.
Yeah, I will try to use the microphone a little better. It's working, right? Okay, yeah, I'll go a little closer to the microphone. So where was I? So I joined this team, this all-star team of benefit educators, and as about a year or two goes by, we have a couple retirements. My friend Peter gets a promotion to conference liaison, and there's no one left. And then they do some reshuffling at Westpath and create this new department, benefit plans, and a manager of benefit education. And they said, well, who wants to do this? I said, I'd be interested, but who's left to manage? And there's no one left. So what I've been doing is building a team over the last year and a half, trying to put together another all-star team, and that's in process right now. At Westpath, we manage a lot of money. Depending upon what day it is, closer to $23 billion in assets. Certainly a lot of money. When I joined, that number was about $19 billion in assets. So we've seen that number grow over the years. I'm less interested in the money than I am the participants. We have over 100,000 participants that we serve right now. And that number includes you active clergy, it includes me, lay participants, it also includes surviving spouses of those participants. So a couple real important groups there. And all this would make us the largest reporting denominational plan in the world. But, why do we do this? Why do we come to work every day? Why do I travel? It is really, our mission is to care for those who serve. Care for those who serve by not just providing retirement benefits, not just defined benefit plans and defined contribution plans, but also retiree supplemental plans, health care plans, death benefits, disability benefits. It's a whole package of different benefits to care for those who serve. So here's the agenda of what we're going to look at. I always like to start a pre-retirement meeting by looking at a couple real important retirement provisions outlined in the Book of Discipline. And then we'll go through the Westpath retirement plans. And that'll take a bit of time. That's a lot of information. We're going to cover a lot of plans. I know that because I looked at your benefit projections, some of you have been around for a long time. So you're probably going to be exposed to several different of these plans. We're going to cover them all. And we're going to go in a very specific order from where we exist right now. I think my battery has gone. Could you see if they have another one? Yeah, they probably have maybe a charged up one. I'll talk loud until we get that back. But we're going to go through all the different retirement plans. And what I'm going to try to point out, like I did yesterday, is what are the decisions that you will need to make at some point regarding those retirement plans, different choices you have, different elections that you can make. Then I'm going to talk about, investing with Westpath. I mentioned, $23 billion in assets. Some of that is yours. Some of that is institutional money, okay? Hospital money, children's home money, foundation money, participant money, defined benefit money. So I want to talk about really the whole philosophy and practice that Westpath will follow to invest that money in a sustainable, socially responsible fashion. I'm going to go into the housing allowance exclusion from a perspective of your retired relationship with the annual conference. I'm going to give you a couple examples of how this tax break can help you in your retirement years. A little bit about death and disability benefits through CPP, the Comprehensive Protection Plan, followed by EY Financial Planning Services, just a terrific benefit available to you during your active ministry as well as, if eligible, during your retirement years. That microphone is for those cameras. And if I talked right into it, I think it would ruin everything. So, unless I'm instructed to do that by the cameraman, I don't think that would do it, but I like your thinking. And then we're going to wrap this up by talking about the Westpath Participant Services Benefit Access. And as I mentioned to the folks yesterday, the day has come to register on Benefit Access. No more waiting. If you haven't done it, it would be a good idea. We'll go through the new user registration process. I think we have a fresh microphone. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Much appreciated, and that'll make it a lot easier for me and a lot, hopefully, better for the participants in this room. So let's get started looking at the retirement plans themselves and a couple of real important provisions of those plans. There's different types of retirement, and you might start to focus on what one you're looking at. Okay, 4 different types. The most common one we see and saw yesterday is your normal retirement. The clergy has reached age 65 or 40 years of service. That makes you eligible for a normal retirement. Okay. Early retirement, we had a few of these yesterday in the room. Okay, that's as early as age 62 or anywhere between 62 and 65 or 30 years of service. That's a early retirement. Reduction in the benefits. I'll have an example of that later. Mandatory retirement. Anybody thinking of mandatory retirement in the room? Some of you are. Excellent. Okay. Age 72, you need to retire. And then the fourth one, we do see it from time to time, a 20-year retirement. The clergy has served for 20 years, separated from the denomination for whatever reason. They will come back to Westpath at a future date to collect their benefits, as early as age 62. We define compensation 2 different ways, and this is important because we use compensation to calculate some of your benefits. And as I go through the slides today, I'll let you know, hey, we're using plan compensation or we're using denominational average compensation. Plan compensation is made up of a couple of components reported by each of the annual conferences, made up of taxable cash salary, any Section 125, 403B reductions, housing exclusion, parsonage equals total plan compensation. Now, if you look throughout the denomination at the average plan compensation of clergy serving full-time appointments, we have what's called denominational average compensation, or DAC we call this. And DAC is important. We will use this to calculate your clergy retirement security program, DB, defined benefit plan. So I'll let you know which one we're using as we go through the slides today. We're going to see this chart several different times. I really like it because it's colorful and it has all the different plans that we're going to talk about with an arrow pointing to the one specifically that we're on. And you'll see, two different boxes for CRSP, Clergy Retirement Security Program. That is a defined benefit and a defined contribution plan. And the two different boxes really represent two different periods of service. The calculation, the formula, if you will, changed due to General Conference of 2012. And I'll explain exactly how the formula works, how your benefit is actually calculated. Prior to that, and many of you in this room will have hopefully a significant ministerial pension plan. MPP existed from 1982 through the end of 2006. And the big difference between, ministerial pension plan and clergy retirement security program, when you get your quarterly statements, does anybody get quarterly statements in the mail like me? I'm not the last one, right? Okay, I like paper, okay? What you don't see on your quarterly statements is your pension plan, is your CRSP defined benefit. It's not there. It's not a balance. It's a formula, and often clergy will ask me, hey, Bob, what's the balance I have in the pension? And I say, Reverend, I don't know. You don't have a balance. You have a formula. Let me explain how the formula works. And that's what we're going to do this morning. Prior to MPP, and they didn't call it the pre-82 plan at the time, it's referred to that now as the pre-82 plan, but it was the Minister's Reserve Pension Fund. Anybody in the room looking at a pre-82 benefit? Wow, wow, even more than yesterday. Hard to believe. And, I always say, I've been thinking from the moment I started, I said to my coworkers, I said, eventually these seminars will get shorter because we won't have to cover pre-82, right? Well, here we are 5 years later, and that day has not come. We still see a lot of pre-82 benefits coming, and that's great. Thank you for your service. That's excellent. Just great to see. Now, off to the side, you see that green circle. That's United Methodist Personal Investment Plan, or UMPIP, as some participants call it. That's the one I'm in. I'm in that one, that green circle, not on the left. I have nothing on the left, but the green circle I have. And has anybody ever been to a Clergy Benefit Academy, a CBA? You have. Excellent. Excellent. Where'd you go? Myrtle Beach.
It was tough.
It was, we tend to have these events at really nice locations, but a little bit off-season to get good rates. And happy to announce we will be back in Myrtle Beach later on this year in November. So if you've never been to a Clergy Benefit Academy, it's a 2.5-day event in places like Pensacola Beach, Myrtle Beach. We've had them at, of course, Reverend Michelle.
Also, we offer scholarships for you and your spouse to go. So
Scholarships.
Part of the registration cost. We just started that this year. So if you'd like more information about that, please contact me, or we'll have information coming out if the.
Oh, thank you. That's great news. And these events, I think, are just terrific. It's not just finance and retirement. It's fellowship and music, and it's spiritual, and it's just a great event. And what was my point? The UMPIP is the class I usually get to teach at Clergy Benefit Academies, as well as at Rev It Up Academies, which is for younger clergy. And that's a 90-minute class just on UMPIP because it's so important. And we call that class Making a Difference with UMPIP, because that plan's not going away. Okay, that plan, you can make a really significant difference in terms of your retirement income. So we're not going to go 90 minutes on UMPIP, but I'll get all the highlights out to you, the different ways to contribute, what are the limits, what are the investments, and how does it work on the back end when you reach retirement? How do you get that money out? So certainly we have a lot to cover, so I'll just keep it moving. When I joined the general board at the time, close to 5 years ago, I had been in the retirement business close to 25 years, and I had seen a lot of pension plans, defined benefit plans, and I knew they were good, and I knew they were costly and valuable. And I had seen on the other side a lot of defined contribution plans, 401ks, 403bs, corporate plans, nonprofit plans. But I had never seen a plan like CRSP, Clergy Retirement Security Program, that combines them both together. The advantages of a defined benefit and the advantages and flexibility of a defined contribution account balance. Now, I mentioned something you don't see on your statement. That's on the left. The defined benefit plan is not on your statement. The defined contribution plan, that is on your statement. That is a balance. That is subject to market fluctuations and market risk, if you will. The defined benefit plan, why are these things costly? Why are they expensive? Because they're valuable to you as a participant, because they provide you with a lifetime of income, a monthly direct deposit that you can't outlive, and if elected at the time of your retirement, can continue, and many times will, to a surviving spouse for the remainder of their lifetime. You never reach a point in time when you say, oh no, next week, next month, next year, next birthday, my pension stops. It continues as long as you do. On the other hand, the defined contribution account, that gives you control and flexibility. That's a balance. You can take that out as fast or as slow as you want. We'll talk a lot about how to get this money out. Eventually you need to take this money out, beginning at age 70 and a half. If you haven't done anything, we'll talk about that. I always tell the retiring class, take care of the left side first. Figure out what you want to do with the defined benefit plan first. Those decisions are important. Those decisions are not revocable, okay? Flexibility with the DC part changes anytime you want. Start it, stop it, increase it, decrease it. Defined benefit plan, once you're set up on a pension payroll that lasts your lifetime, there's no going back. So we will go through the different choices after we talk about the ministerial pension plan. We'll go through the 6 different annuity options you can choose from, the different cost of living or COLA adjustments you can choose from. But I always say focus on that DB first. And you're not allowed to make that decision today, what you want to do. You can only make that decision when you are closer to retirement, and that makes sense. If someone's 5, 10, 15 years away from retirement, and they say to me, hey, Bob, I'd like to tell Westpath what I want to do now in that defined benefit plan. The answer is no, you can't. Why not? Well, 5, 10, 15 years from now, will you be married? Will you be divorced? Will you be widowed? Will you be in good health? Will your spouse be in good health? These are things to consider when you make that important lifetime election. So let's go through how the benefit is actually calculated. I mentioned it's not a balance. Defined benefit. Your benefit is defined by math. It's easy math. It looks worse than it is in the example, but it's really quite simple. We're multiplying 3 different factors together. Those are the bullets. You have a factor of 1.25%. And this is for the first part of service under CRSP from 07 through the end of 2013. Because that's exactly 7 years. So you're multiplying a factor 1.25% multiplied by the denominational average compensation, the DAC, at the time of your retirement, further multiplied by the years and months of service during that period of time. That's 7, and then you get this annual dollar amount, $62.44. So at Westpath we say, well, we don't pay you annually with the pension, we pay you monthly, so let's divide that by 12. Easy math, and we get a monthly dollar amount. 520, we're going to hold that number aside and say, wait a minute, we have to look at service now beginning January 1, 2014, and up until that June 30th before a participant's retirement. And that's what we're going to do. This example is for a 2019 retirement. And if you look at this slide and the next slide, real quick, you might say, what happened? What changed? Well, that first bullet changed. It goes from 1.25%, the factor, to 1%. Why? Due to General Conference of 2012, to make the plan more sustainable, they changed the factor. They didn't change the math. So we're looking at that second piece of service, 5.5, 5 years, 6 months of service. The math is the same. multiply the DAC, the same DAC, times 1%, times the 5.5, get an annual amount. You with me? Divide by 12, you get a monthly amount, and now we just got to add them together, and that's what we'll do at Westpath. We have this total, and then the decisions that you make about that benefit will impact that amount. Okay, you have 6 different surviving spouse, 3 surviving spouse, 3 single life annuities, 6 options to choose from, different cost of living adjustments. Everybody, every retiree will get at least a 2% COLA, cost of living adjustment, in their benefit. And that's important, very important, these COLAs. That means your benefit is going to increase. You will have other COLA options to choose from as well, 3%, 4%, 5%. And I'll show you later a nice chart with the impact of those different COLAs. If anybody is looking at early retirement, as outlined in the Book of Discipline, you will receive a reduction in your benefit. The theory is you're going to be getting it for a longer period of time. How much of a reduction depends upon how early your early retirement actually is. 62 is the earliest. 64 and a half is getting closer to normal. The way the reduction works, it's 0.5% per month for early. So that would be 6% per year. In this example, the clergy does not have the full 40 years of service, or we wouldn't be looking at reductions. Okay, so it's a 12% reduction, bringing the initial benefit down to $745 a month. Does that make sense? Excellent. Any questions up to this point on how your defined benefit is actually calculated? All right, great. Let's look at the second component of, and some folks call it CRISP. I like to call it CRSP. Officially, Clergy Retirement Security Program has a defined contribution. This is an account balance. This does appear on those quarterly statements. And it is comprised of both non-matching and matching contributions. 2 different types. And this changed a while ago due to General Conference also of 2012. And a non-match means you really don't need to do anything to get it. 2% of your plan compensation is added to an account balance. In addition, if you are, and a lot of participants are, making contributions to UMPIP, the Personal Investment Plan. So if you're making a contribution of at least 1%, you're picking up a matching contribution tied to you participating. Okay? So many of you are getting a total of 3% going into your DC account balance, plus on the right, whatever you're putting into UMPIP, and we'll look at that, whether it's before tax, after tax. Some of you might be considering Roth contributions, you might have a rollover in there. We'll look at all those different sources of money. What happens to this DC account balance? I mentioned before, take care of the defined benefit first. This will be there. You might not need this right away. The opposite could be true. You might need this right away, depending upon your situation. But the first choice with this is to, let's say you have the folks yesterday, normal retirement, age 65, they've made the defined benefit elections. You don't need to do anything here. And it doesn't mean your money is now frozen, sitting idle, not invested, not hopefully growing. It's still doing all of those things. Okay, and it's available to you when you need it. Some of you might be directing your own investments right now. Some of you, I bet a lot of you, are in life stage investment management. What are the options? And this is going to be a common repetitive theme this morning, these options. Do nothing, take it out in installments, self-managed. That means you tell us what those amounts will be. We're going to talk later about life stage retirement income to calculate how much we think you can take out. Doing nothing can only last so long. Eventually the government will lose its patience with you and want you to start taking something out, right? And that's not till age 70 and a half. Much more about that later. Much more about the housing allowance exclusion, which could offset some of that income that you get from taxation. If you die and have a remaining balance, it doesn't go to Westpath, doesn't go to your annual conference, it goes to your designated beneficiary. And we will cover that this morning, the importance of, not just in your active ministry, but also in your retirement, to keep those beneficiary designations up to date. Make sense? Great. All right, that was good. The arrow has moved to the ministerial pension plan. And I would imagine just about everybody here has a ministerial pension plan balance, okay, MPP, from 82 through 2006. Mr. Pirate is making me laugh over there. And what I find interesting about MPP, a lot of things, but in particular, it looks a lot like, acts a lot like CRSP later on at retirement, because it does provide you both things that we talked about. A lifetime of income, a monthly direct deposit that you can't outlive, can continue to your spouse, plus the flexibility of an account balance. Your ministerial pension plan account balances have to be invested using LifeStage Investment Management, okay? And we're going to talk about LifeStage and the importance of having a profile on record at Westpath with your LifeStage Investment Management service. This account balance remains separate from UMPIP, remains separate from CRSPDC, and is really invested right up until the day before your retirement. And for that crowd yesterday, that's June 30th. That money is still invested, still earning, hopefully still growing. Upon retirement, and the first choice is, I don't need to do anything. I don't want this yet. And that money will still, 100% of it still be invested. But you might need this right away. A lot of the folks yesterday will need this right away as a source of monthly income. And if they commence the benefit, the way it works is 65% of that balance exactly becomes a lifetime annuity, 1 or 2 lifetimes, different COLA increases, including 0. Okay? 35%, and what a lot of participants will do at retirement is just roll it over to UMPIP. Easiest thing to do, and then all that flexibility in that account balance, take it out when you want, partial distributions, full distributions, lump sum distributions if needed. Similar to what I would say about CRSP defined benefit, figure out the 65% first. Those are the lifetime irrevocable decisions. The 35%, that's going to be easy. That's going to be there. That's going to give you flexibility. So this annuity, and we're going to look at some of the factors that we use to calculate the annuity, but we will split it exactly 65-35, and the 35%, you can roll it over somewhere else. Okay, there's reasons why you might want to be careful with that. You might need it as a full distribution, a partial distribution. You might consolidate it with your other DC accounts, and we'll look at this today using LifeStage Retirement Income to include that when we calculate how much we think you can take out on a monthly basis. So you have these different options. Every situation will be different, okay? Now, I'm going to go through the decisions that you have to make, and these pertain to both Clergy Retirement Security Program defined benefit and that 65% annuitized portion of ministerial pension plan, okay? Now, let's be clear, the decisions you make for one plan don't have to be the same as you make for the other plan, whether in terms of surviving spouse benefit, in terms of what COLA, cost of living adjustment, it can be totally different. Let's just begin by just explaining, when I say annuity today, I'm not talking about like an insurance salesman comes over and wants to sell you an annuity, a whole life policy, something like that. I'm just talking about a stream of payments that last your lifetime, and if elected at retirement, will continue to that surviving spouse. Very common. Okay, so this direct deposit stream, this deposit that helps replace part of your paycheck that goes away. The annuity is based upon some important factors. What is your age? We know what that is. What is the age of your spouse or other contingent annuitant? How much is 65%? What surviving spouse benefit did you elect? What cost of living adjustment did you elect? What is your life expectancy? We will look at mortality tables. Westpath has an annuity payout rate, and these numbers are crunched together to come up with a monthly dollar amount. Now, on the next 2 slides, we're going to look at examples. And I don't want anyone to think, and I said this yesterday too, don't think that this is your exact particular benefit. This is just an example. And if you're interested, well, who is it an example of? A clergy person looking at normal retirement, age 65, and the spouse is 65, okay, in this example, okay? So you're going to see different dollar amounts. You have 6 choices. you want to only pick one. Benefit Access will only allow you to pick one. When we did the retirement process through forms and paperwork, many of these forms would come back with multiple elections, okay, invalid, okay? Also keep in mind that on this one, there are 2 columns. Westpath is not paying out both columns at the same time, one at a time. So you have this payable to you upon your death, what's payable to the contingent annuitant or spouse. Okay. And if you're looking at these first 3 choices, what's the highest dollar amount that you see? $12.84. Very good. So let's start with that one. That's the highest dollar amount. What does that mean? It means a lifetime benefit for the participant and 70% continuing to the spouse. $12.84, you die, $8.99 continues to the spouse. And you might be thinking, hey, $8.99, that's not enough. Let me look at the other options. And you should look at all the options. Okay, you got to pick one. And I want you to understand the choice that you make, but I also want you to understand the 5 choices you didn't make. Sometimes I compare this to you're shopping for something expensive. Anybody ever do that? You shop for something expensive, you're looking for a refrigerator or a dishwasher or a motorcycle, and maybe you go to different stores and maybe you like to haggle and bother salespeople and look at different features. And the difference here is you're not bringing this back to the store if you don't like it. Okay, if you didn't choose wisely, there's no returning it. So you want to understand the one you pick plus the ones you don't pick. So if you look at that $8.99, you might say that's not enough based upon the income needs of the spouse. Certainly they'll still have expenses after you're gone. Things will change, certainly, financially. So you want to also look at the life and 85%. That's the second row, life and 85. And you'll notice 2 things happen. The $12.84 goes down a little bit. The $8.99 goes up more. And you're looking at that, you say, well, $105.3 plus whatever, COLA. That might not be enough. Let me also consider the life and 100%. Again, the payable to you amount goes down to $1196. 100% continues upon your death to the surviving spouse, $1196. Does that make sense? Yes.
Silly question. For as far as your beneficiary, can you name a trust? Or does it have to be a
No.
spouse?
Has to be a person.
Okay.
It has to, yeah, because this just can't, when will a trust die?
When the last grandchildren go?
Yeah, no, I mean, you can't set this up to pay out forever. No, it's not a bad question, though. There are no bad questions. Just to expand upon that, though, because you got me thinking, Bill, about that spouse. I mean, these 3, and I like to call them joint and survivor annuities, life and % annuities. These are really the standard form of payment for a married clergy person. The next 3, single life annuities, are really optional forms of payment for a married clergy person. You need to provide your spouse with a survivor benefit unless they agree, consent, and understand that they're giving up their right to receive such a benefit. They would have to sign a waiver, and that'll be an interesting discussion that you have, right? Right? Okay? But there might be a good financial planning reason to do just that. Based upon health, based upon other finances, other benefits your spouse might have exposure to when they retire, or maybe they are retired or they have inheritances coming, and you just want to receive the single life annuity. You can, but you need to mention it, and not when they're not home. Now, the next 3 are the next 3 annuities. So a total of 6. And if you're looking at these 3 here, you might say, wow, Bob, I like these numbers better. Much better, more like it. Why are these numbers bigger? SLA, why are they bigger? One single life annuity. When you die, and we don't know how long that life is going to be. So you have 3 different single life annuities. And let's look at the first one. That's the highest dollar amount. It's a life-only benefit. We don't know how long that life is going to be. In this example, it's $15.51 a month. Okay? I always tell the retiree class, and sometimes they laugh, sometimes they get mad, but I'll say it here anyway. If you could just tell Westpath the exact date you think you will die and the exact date you think your spouse will die, we'll figure it out which one to pick. And I always tell the story about this guy at the Bronx Zoo some years ago when I worked for the Cultural Institutions Retirement System. Joe, he comes in, he's retiring, goes to a seminar like this. We go through all the options. Joe had worked at the zoo for over half his life. 62 was their normal retirement, nice fat pension. Joe fills out the paperwork. Joe goes through the options. Joe was single at the time of his retirement. Joe looked like he was in pretty good shape. Joe's happy, he's retiring, he's off and gone. 3 months later, we get notified Joe passed away. I said, really? What happened to Joe? He looked good. How many checks did we send out? And it was checks at the time. 3. We sent out 3 checks. 3, that's it. Don't seem fair, does it? It wasn't. But that's the way it worked. Okay? Now, had Joe known that he had some pre-existing condition, disease, ailment, he might have picked one of the other options for the single life annuity. And what those other, the 5 and 10-year do is they guarantee payments are going to be made to somebody. Now, there's no option here among the 6 that the pension is going to stop for the retired participant. No option. It'll stop. But under the 5 and 10-year guarantee, it might stop for someone else. And to answer, or go back to your question, the 5 or 10, this could be a charity, a church, an estate, okay? It doesn't matter the age of the person because payments will stop, okay, but not for the participant, okay? It could be a child, age doesn't matter, a brother, sister, mom, dad, girlfriend, boyfriend, or spouse, but the spouse would have to agree to this because it would stop for them in some circumstances. I'll give you 2 stories. Reverend Joe is looking at a life with 5-year guarantee. So you see the amount goes down slightly from $1,551 to $1,540. So not a lot of money, not a big difference, but payments are going to be paid to somebody for at least 5 years. So Reverend Joe picks that 5-year guarantee, good for him. He has got a COLA going, and he lives 23 years in retirement. Very nice, good for him. He dies, it stops. The term is long up, okay? Let's say he wants to guarantee payments even for a longer period of time, a 10-year guarantee. Again, the number drops a little bit, okay? I'll give you the opposite story. He dies after 7 years, chose the 10-year guarantee. We look at the beneficiary. Who's going to get the payments for the next 3 years? Whoever was designated. What if during that 7 years he was alive, that person he designated died first? Designate someone else. If that person is receiving payments and they die and the term is still not up, someone is going to get the payments. Guarantee does mean guarantee. Does that make sense? And I'm not trying to make light of it, but I have seen participants choose that if they have an ailment, a disease, a condition that's serious going into their retirement. They guarantee that payments, they take a little bit less, but they guarantee payments are going somewhere. And if they outlive the term, that's great. It does continue. Doesn't stop for the participants. Any questions? Make sense? Great. Now the second really important decision you have to make is about a cost of living adjustment. And think of that as a raise, an increase in your benefits every year. This is a good thing, just like your income, your planned compensation. Folks at Westpath, we get increases annually. This is good to help keep up with inflation. I have seen plans that don't have COLAs, and that's not a good thing. So I think we all know by now that $1,000 a month today is not the same as $1,000 a month 5 or 10 years from now because of inflation, okay? You will have, when you go into benefit access, like the retiree class yesterday, when they go into benefit access and look at their elections, it's going to be pre-populated with 2% for each plan. That's the default, but you can change that. The minimum COLA for CRISP is going to be, CRISP DB, is going to be 2%, okay? MPP also gives you a 0% COLA option. You say, wow, why would someone want no increase in their benefit? Why wouldn't a participant just pick 3, 4, or 5% compounded increase? Well, there's reasons for that, okay? Let's look at this chart together, and you can see the different COLA options. 0, that's for MPP only. 2, 3, 4, 5. And, we'll start by looking at the default. That's the 2%. It's kind of here in pink, and you see every year that's going up 2%, 2%, 2%. Let's look at the 5% COLA. Who among us wouldn't want a 5% increase? Well, that's going to impact your benefit right out of the gate, okay? And that's the one here that's kind of in orange. The 5% is going to significantly bring down your initial monthly benefit. But every year, it's going up compounded 5%. After a number of years, you're actually going to be getting the highest benefit because of this annual 5% increase. And let's also look at the 0% for MPP, which is an option, and that is the red line here. If you pick a 0% COLA in MPP, you're going to get hundreds of dollars a month, initially more. But every year, it's going to be flat. That's that line, straight line, 0%, no COLA increase. Obviously, these COLAs are important because you want income in retirement that keeps up or outpaces the rate of inflation. And I asked some of the investment folks at Westpath if they could give me some historical rates of inflation. And they said, how come? I said, well, I want to talk about it when I talk about COLAs, okay? So they gave me a lot of information, you know, highest 10 years, what average inflation was, past 25 years, you can see it's kind of been just over 2%, lowest 10 years, a negative number, and they go all back 198 years of inflation data. I said, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. And if you look back over 198 years, inflation has averaged just under 2%, 1.9%. Okay? The default COLA is 2%. Okay? But other options are available. I mean, think about just something we talked about yesterday. You know, what do you pay for gasoline here in central Pennsylvania? Too much, right? Why is it going up? Why is it going up? 309. I paid less than that yesterday. I filled up because I thought it was pretty good. I went to Sheetz and it looked like it was 279 or something.
274.
274. I'm filling up. I'm going to get some empty cans and fill up before I go back home. Oh, I'm going to load up going over the George Washington Bridge full of gasoline. Now think back when you were teenagers driving around in those big cars. What's the lowest you ever remember paying for a gallon of gasoline back when you're kids? 24? Anybody lower than 24? What do you got? 10 cents? Fill up for $1. And maybe inflation's not the best example, but I think it's a fun example. And you remember several years ago, I don't remember how many years ago it was, maybe 5 or 6, when gasoline was going up really high. On Long Island, it was up to $4.75. So I'd go in there with a $5 bill and ask for change. 1 gallon. But what did it go up to here? It crossed $4, I bet, right? Back. Okay. So just, keep in mind, everything seems to have an increase every year. And that's why you want your benefits also to have these COLA increases to keep up or outpace the rate of inflation. So just to kind of summarize MPP, you don't need to do anything right away. Let's say, for example, you're looking at a normal retirement, age 65, and you don't need this money yet. You can say, I'm not going to commence it. Doesn't mean your MPP balance is sitting frozen or idle. It's still fully invested using life stage investment management. You got to think about the annuity options if you do want to commence your benefit. Okay, what survivor benefit do you want? Look at the different amounts. Look at the different COLA increases. And when the folks that are retiring go on benefit access, when they put in those different COLAs, they will see those numbers change right before their eyes. Yes?
It's a quick question on these example amounts for the MPP, within the 6 types of annuities. Is that a yearly amount or a monthly amount?
That's monthly.
That's monthly.
Yep. And that's just an example, but those are monthly amounts. When we look at your benefit projection later on, those are monthly amounts too. And I'm going to explain a lot of the assumptions that we use when we run those important benefit projections and kind of show you how you can run your own benefit projections with your own circumstances, not Westpath's assumptions, not having spoken to you. So the arrow has moved. It's dropped down to pre-82, and I know we have folks here that will get a pre-82 benefit. It's fairly straightforward. Each annual conference makes some decisions for you. You don't have all these options for survivor benefit. You don't have all these options for COLA with pre-82. Westpath will calculate your pre-82 benefit 2 different ways. And once we come up with the calculations, the dollar amounts on a monthly basis, we're going to look at the numbers and always give you the highest one. We're not going to call you up and say, which would you like, the higher or lower? We'll give you the higher. Okay? So we're going to be looking at the defined benefit service money, DBSM we call it, and annuitize that. But we're also going to look at a very straightforward formula benefit, math like we did before with CRSP. Okay? But we're going to continue to do this calculation every year to see if anything has changed. Always giving you the higher of the two benefits. So in this example, follow with me. In the example box, we have a clergy with 6 years of pre-82 service. At annual conference, you vote on a PSR, a past service rate, as you recall, right? Each annual conference does this. Sometimes you see that number go up. Often it does go up. Your conference has a PSR, past service rate, of $630 per year. So in this example, we multiply 6 years times the 630 to get an annual amount, $3780 divided by 12, $315 per month. So we're holding that number. We got to do the other, convert the defined benefit service money to an annuity, and we do that, and it's slightly higher. It's $369. So we're going to send you the $369, but we're going to keep an eye on your conference's past service rate going forward and do that calculation every year. And if the day comes when your PSR keeps going up and up and up, if the formula benefit becomes greater than the defined benefit service money converted to annuity, we'll flip you over. We'll notify you of that. Does that make sense? Now, the conference sets these decisions for you. If you are retiring early, a reduction very similar to what we talked about in CRSP, 0.5% per month, 6% per year. If you are single at the time of your retirement, the only option is a single life annuity, lasting as long as you do. If you are single at the time of your retirement and several months into your retirement you get married, you call up Westpath to add the new spouse, what are we going to do? No, we can't do that. It is the spouse at the time of your retirement, during your Episcopal appointment. Now, if you're a married participant, each conference sets the survivor rate. Not a lot of choices. Your conference has set life and 75%. Very common. Okay? Those are the options. So it's fairly straightforward. We'll continue to do the calculation at Westpath every year. Moving forward to that green circle, UMPIP. How many of you are participating in UMPIP right now, including me? A lot of hands. That's fairly typical. I mean, this is a voluntary plan. And sometimes, not so much in a church plan, but in a corporate plan, if it's voluntary, man, you're happy to get 50, 55, 60% people participating. We have closer to 80, 81% of participants. That's really a great number. I think the word is out that you can make a difference with UMPIP in your retirement income. And what this is all about, folks, is when you retire, eventually they will stop paying you, right? The paycheck goes away. So the challenge for retirees, whether it's a denominational plan, a corporate plan, the challenge for retirees in planning for this eventuality, this date, is to replace the paycheck, a percentage of the paycheck that goes away. And nothing by itself is going to do that. But when you add up these different plans, plus many of you will be eligible for Social Security retirement benefits, hopefully that will replace a good percentage, 70, 75% or more of the paycheck that goes away. That's what this is all about. And UMPIP can help you do that. Some of you are in the home stretch. Some of you might be sitting here and already made up your mind when you're going to retire. And that's fine. Some of you might leave this room today and change your mind about when you're going to retire after you look at your projection. You might say, I need to stay on. I need to run another projection, Bob. This is not going to work right now. Everybody should think about UMPIP a couple of ways, 3 different ways at least. How much are you contributing? How are you contributing? And how are you managing it? What percentage are you putting in? Is it before tax, after tax, Roth? Are you managing it? Or is LifeStage managing it? And let me ask that question. How many, and it stays in this room, how many of you are actually actively self-managing your own accounts? Meaning that you're looking at the investments, all 10 of them. You're identifying your goals. You are choosing the investments. You're coming up with this asset allocation, this diversification. And then on an ongoing basis, you're monitoring that and reallocating or rebalancing from time to time. Anybody doing that right now, if you can raise your hand? A couple of you, good. Excellent, yeah, okay. Anybody in life stage investment management, where Westpath is managing your account, and hopefully you've completed a profile to tell us a couple things about you. Okay. Third question. This is important, please be honest. How many of you did not vote there because you're just not sure? Raise your hand, between us. Okay, that's fine. You're the group I worry about. I do. If the easiest way, and you might be in life stage but just not realize it, you could have defaulted easily into life stage. The easiest way to find out, you can call Westpath, you can go on Benefit Access, but if you hang on to your statements like I do, page 3 on my statement, it'll say, Bob, the investment of your defined contribution account is managed by Life Stage Investment Management. Or it's going to say, you have chosen to self-manage your own defined contribution account, okay? And you are free to go into Life Stage, go out of Life Stage at any time. This plan gives you a lot of flexibility, a lot of control. 4 different sources of money. You might have a statement that has balances in all 4, or maybe balances in just 1, okay? The most common one we see is before tax contributions. And what you're doing with those is everybody's waiting for a piece of your paycheck, right? You're saying, wait a minute, the first thing I'm doing, paying myself first, this is coming off the gross, okay? So you're not paying taxes on this money now. Reducing your taxable income, not subject to SECA. It grows for your tax deferred. When you take it out later, that's when the government says, okay, good, you're taking something out, possibly offset from taxation by the housing allowance exclusion, which we will talk about this morning. Now, after tax is kind of the opposite. Everything has come out of your paycheck, and then you make a contribution. Those grow for you also tax deferred. When you take those out after retirement, in this example, you don't want to pay taxes again on those contributions, but it's the earnings, interest, dividends, growth that you experience that becomes taxable. Well, who keeps track of that? Westpath does, okay? We don't ask you to do that. We have to do that for you, to keep track carefully, so you're not double taxed on that. Roth contributions were added, I think it's about 3.5 years now. When I started it at the general board, there were no Roth contributions, but I heard, hey, Roth is coming, Roth is coming. Well, it's here. And a Roth contribution, is anybody doing Roth right now? Oh, some of you are, good. Yeah, I mean, Roth is interesting. It is a form of after-tax contribution, but if the money comes out as a qualified distribution, it's going to be 100% tax-free. Wow. I can't stand up here and say, hey, everybody should be doing Roth. I don't know your personal financial circumstances, but I know everybody should think about it at least, because it goes fairly quick to be qualified. You might not need tax-free income in retirement, or you might certainly need tax-free income in retirement. And then the fourth potential source of money on your statement's separate balance would be rollovers. And rollovers really just talks about the portability of these defined contribution plans. And you don't see turnover at high rates in a church plan as you would a corporate plan where people tend to change jobs. But these plans have always been, and they're even more portable now than they've ever been. Meaning that a couple things, like if you came to ministry late, had a previous career, I've talked to a lot of clergy that have rolled over. That just means moving money from one provider to another. Okay? Very common transaction, no taxes, no penalties. So you might identify these different sources of money on your statement. Depending upon how it went in will depend upon how it comes out. Again, before tax contributions, you deferred the taxes, it grows tax deferred, taxable when it comes out. After tax, you've paid taxes on that already. It grows tax deferred, it's the earnings that are taxable. Roth, same thing. It's after tax, it's growing tax deferred, but it might come out as qualified money. What does it mean to be qualified money for Roth purposes? The first contribution, not every contribution, but the first one had to be in there for at least 5 years. You got to be at least 59 and a half. Or in the event you die or become disabled, you have access to this tax-free, okay? If you have only been in Roth for, let's say, for example, 3 years, and you're retiring at 65 this July 1, I would say don't take it out yet. Wait the 2 years, and then it's going to be qualified, tax-free income. Does that make sense? This is, and I'm jumping ahead, we're going to talk about EY, Financial Planning Services available to you. If you're ever talking to EY, ask them to look at your situation. Maybe Roth contributions would be a good idea for you, or maybe not, but they can help you analyze that to see what is the best fit, what type of contributions. Has anyone ever done a rollover? I'm just curious more than anything. Anybody ever rolled money over into this plan? You have a rollover source? Good. Prior career? Prior career? Okay, excellent. Yeah. Maintained as a separate balance, separate source of money. We accept rollovers. We have actually a rollover experts at Westpath that can help you to see if something's qualified to be rolled over. This could be a 401k plan, a 403b plan, not-for-profit, a governmental plan, or a traditional IRA are eligible for rollovers. So these plans, unlike defined benefit, where your benefit is defined contribution means the government defines how much you're allowed to contribute every year, and they let us know, usually very late in the year. Last year they were a little bit nicer. They let us know a little bit earlier, which was so nice. Sometimes they leave these limits alone. Sometimes they raise them. It's supposedly indexed for inflation. The limits are high. And really, when you look at your defined contribution UMPIP, UMPIP, and you say, well, how much can I put in? Well, the answer is anywhere from zero all the way up to $19,000 in 2019. Wow, that's a lot of money. In addition, if you are or will be over the age of 50 and you've maxed out on those regular contributions, I'll call them, and if you're inclined, you can do up to an additional $6,000 in what's called a catch-up contribution. So wow, a total of 25. In 2018, that total was 24,000 combined, catch-up and regular. And often, not often, but occasionally I would be doing an individual consultation with a clergy person, and I look at the benefit projections, and I'll look at your monthly UMPIP contribution on page 2. I'll look at that number because I want to talk about it. Not because I'm nosy, but because I care. And sometimes, if I see a zero there, ooh, I say, we got to talk about this. Or if I see a low number, I say, we got to talk about this. But occasionally I would see, last year in 2018, the clergy person was putting in $2,000 a month, the max. And I said, all right, I know a couple of things, what's going on here. They're maxing out. They must be over age 50. They're doing the regular, they're doing the catch-up. The math was nice and even. $2,000 a month, the max was $24,000 a year. And I would still ask, Reverend, why are you putting in $2,000 a month? That's a lot of money. And I would hear often the same response. Well, Bob, I'm in the home stretch here, Bob. Well, Bob, I couldn't do this earlier on. I had seminary debt and college education debt for the kids, and I couldn't do it. Now I'm maybe making more money. Now I can. Now I see the finish line. I see that normal or early or mandatory retirement date. And I know, because I heard, once you're off payroll, once you're not getting paid, you can't put money in here anymore, and that is true. I say, well done, good for you. Good for you. I've never, and I've seen a lot of people go through the retirement process, in the 5 years here, in the previous 25 years. There's a lot of people in these types of plans, these defined contribution plans, these 401ks, 403bs. No one has ever told me, hey, Bob, I did this wrong, I saved too much money. Boy, what went wrong? How do I fix this? No one's ever said that to me. But I've seen plenty of people, and sometimes they don't even say it. I can tell by the look in their eye, they didn't save enough, okay? And they regret that. And I've done a lot of corporate plans where, I have some of the old timers walking around the factory or the steel mill or the coal mine, and they say, I'm telling these young guys, you got to be in this plan, and they're right. You got to be in this plan and take advantage of it. Okay, if you haven't revisited it in a while, the time is now to do that. Okay, if you've put in 1% and never changed that, maybe think about doing 2. Okay, if you have the resources, I don't want anybody to put in more than they reasonably can afford. That's not the point. But put in what you reasonably can afford. You should be able to tell me, hey, Bob, I'm putting in 4% and I'm doing it on a before-tax basis and I'm using LifeStage. Well, Bob, I'm putting in 5%, I'm doing half Roth, half before tax, and I'm self-managing. Okay, this is your plan, and you can make really a significant difference in your retirement income. You are allowed to change this at any time. The reason I stress that is often I've heard a clergy person say, well, Bob, they told me I can't change this until next appointment, next year, next July 1. Not true. You're allowed to change this. This is, you're the clergy person. This is your paycheck. You can change it whenever you want, and it should be done as soon as administratively possible. And by change, I mean raise it, lower it, stop it, or change how you are contributing. I know that some agencies, including the one I work for, and some annual conferences have adopted auto-escalation features for these plans, meaning that if you're at a certain percentage, once a year, they're going to raise you 1%. They'll send you out a nice letter saying, hey, beginning on May 1st, we're going to bring you up. If you don't want that, you got to figure out how to say stop, okay? Because these plans have just become, and I think will continue to be, and we don't know what the future brings us with the plans at Westpath, but we do know that, defined contribution plans are here to stay. They're not going away. They're important way to save money on taxes, enjoy tax-deferred growth in your investments, and then when you take it out, some of it can be offset from taxation because of what we will talk about shortly, the housing allowance exclusion in retirement. So you would complete a form, you can express this, and a lot of people will do a flat dollar amount. I prefer a percentage, so if you get compensation increases, that will go up as well. But you can, that's the point here. You can change it at any time. And what about access to this money? It's important to understand how much to put in, but equally important to understand the different ways, whether it's retirement or before retirement, to have access to this money. First way is if you are 59 and a half, you can do, and I know I talked to some folks yesterday who have done this, it's called an in-service withdrawal. 59 and a half is that magic age when the penalty goes away for that distribution. The plan does have hardship loans available. Okay, and loans are a much nicer way to get money out of this plan. It's not a taxable event. You got to pay it back. Hardship withdrawals are available, and that's a kind of a nasty way to get money out of this plan, but they're available. In the event of a disability, that's important. If you're disabled, you're probably going to have immediate and longer-term financial needs. You do have access to this money. And then retirement, that last bullet, that's what this is really all about, retirement. Now, I would say the first thing that you should do if you're having a difficult hardship financial circumstance, pick up the phone and call Westpath. They can go through these options. I like the loan a lot better. And I mentioned yesterday to the class that's retiring, that loan feature is kind of interesting because you can even utilize that in your retirement status. You can borrow your own money. It's not a distribution. It might be an alternative to putting a down payment on a home if that's what you're doing for the first time. You got to pay the loan back. Okay, you got to charge yourself interest. That's required, but the interest does go back into the participant's account, so that's a good thing. So a loan option is there. Just pick up the phone, speak to a service center, and they can really walk you through this whole process of loans and hardship withdrawals. I want to focus on retirement. You've reached retirement. What happens? 65, normal retirement. Again, common theme, don't do anything with UMPIP. It'll still be invested. Self-managed, life stage. You might need this money right away. You might need to take all of this money right away. Obviously, from a tax planning, financial planning perspective, you want to think about that very carefully, but it's an option. Partial distributions are an option. You would tell us what that amount is. Or what many retirees will do is convert this to a monthly direct deposit, a monthly check, a monthly source of income. You can tell us what that amount is by self-managing, or again, use life stage. Again, any remaining balances upon your death go to who? Your beneficiaries, exactly right. Excellent. Excellent. Yesterday, I really stressed this to the retiree class because I don't want them to be worried about RMD, required minimum distributions. And I think I mentioned the government eventually will lose its patience with you and they want you to start taking something out. And that's just not for a church plan, it's for any of these plans. That magical age, 70 and a half, unless you're still working. Unless you're still working, like if you're looking at a mandatory, it's not applying to you. But 70 and a half, that's when they say, you gotta start taking something out, we want you to do it. Most participants that I've seen anyway are well into it by then. Well into it. They are taking out enough and more to satisfy the required minimum distribution. Yes, they are, okay? But if you're not, we take it, not just Westpath, financial service companies take this very seriously, RMD, because the penalties are quite severe if you don't take out that required minimum distribution. The government will tax you 50%. Ooh, yeah, right. 50% of what should have come out. So let's say it was $4,000 that should have come out. You can do the math. That's a big penalty. Okay, so we don't want that to happen. We will notify you. We'll even calculate the RMD for you. If that's all you want is the absolute minimum, we'll let you know what that is. Okay, we will look at that bottom bullet. And I mean this in all seriousness. We pick on the IRS. We should. Okay? Absolutely. But they do have this, and I read it. I have a copy of it. I travel with it. Publication 590. And it's available if you're interested at irs.gov. And it's well written, believe it or not, and easy to understand. And we will use those exact charts to calculate how much you need to take out. And we need to do this every single year. Most folks, again, I've seen have taken out more. If you sign up for life stage retirement income, the service where Westpath will tell you how much to take out, we're going to give you enough to satisfy the RMDs. That's built into life stage retirement income. So it is important, but I say, don't get hung up on it because we will let you know. We'll absolutely let you know. We'll send out notices. Okay. Now, we're doing pretty good on time, so let's just forge ahead with investing with Westpath will be our next topic. And this is a topic I just happen to really like to talk about. I'm just amazed by the philosophy and practices that we follow with these assets that are entrusted to us. Close to $23 billion in assets is a lot of money. We will hire a lot of very sophisticated, specialized investment managers to help us with some of these portfolios. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is invest this money in a socially responsible, sustainable fashion that upholds the values of the church. That's what we're trying to do. I think you're aware of some exclusions, some things that we're just not going to touch. Question?
I'm sorry, before you move on, back on the UMPIP, what is the maximum percentage that you can contribute to that?
Question about UMPIP. What is the maximum percentage that you can contribute? Well, there's no maximum percentage, but whatever percentage you choose can't exceed those contribution limits. So let's say, for example, we said the total you could do if you're over age 50 is $25,000. So if your plan compensation is $50,000, you couldn't do more than 50%. It would have to be tied to that, break it down into actually a dollar amount. So just when you calculate, if you want, and we've done, sometimes at like clergy benefit academies, we'll do Mentimeter, which is a live polling thing. And one of the questions I like to throw in there is, how much are you contributing? And I also have in there, are you doing a flat dollar amount or a percentage? And I do see quite a lot of people doing flat dollar amounts and a lot doing percentages. It's totally your preference, but just make sure, and you'll be notified if you're on course to exceed those contribution limits. So what we're trying to do for participants with this investment, again, that's what I care about, participants. We want to offer you investments that are sustainable, are reasonable, that don't have any sales charges, any commissions. These are not load funds. These are transparent. I think we keep our expenses very low. Plus, we want to offer meaningful services like life stage investment management to help you keep track and manage this stuff. Now, what I'd like to do, because I think it's fun, hopefully you will too, is just talk a little bit about each investment. And I mean a little bit. And we have 10 different investments. And I just want to go through them in a specific order, from conservative to moderate to more aggressive. Fair enough? I will tell you 2, maybe 3 things about each fund. I want to tell you what category it fits into, because that's important. And if you understand the broad category in blue, you're going to understand a lot about the fund that's in that category. I want to tell you the goal of the fund. Each fund has a clearly defined goal. What is it trying to do with your money? And then I'll briefly say, well, what type of security will it actually invest in to achieve that goal on an ongoing basis? These are listed in the exact same order that they're listed on your quarterly statement for reference, okay? So this first category here is called capital preservation funds. Just by those words, what would you think? High risk or low risk? Low risk, good. Preserve your capital, protect your principal. The goal of the category, clearly stated, safety. You put your money here, we want to keep it safe. What else do we want to do? Pay you some interest. Okay, interest often is described as income. When you think of income describing an investment, think of your paycheck is called income. You get paid regularly. These funds with income as a goal pay you monthly. Now, the name of your fund gives you a clue. It's called Stable Value Fund, right? It's not called this thing fluctuates a lot fund, right? It's flat. It's stable. Every month it goes up when interest is paid to you. Usually you'll get your lowest rates of return there. Usually. Not always, but usually. No one's ever lost money in the Stable Value Fund. The next category, very important, we have 3 different funds in the income category, often called bond funds. Even within bonds, you can say conservative, moderate, more aggressive bond funds. What makes bond funds different, they also want to provide you with income, a higher rate of income than stable value. They're not going to be as concerned about being stable. They will fluctuate. I'm not talking about wild fluctuations in a bond fund, but you've heard of stocks. Okay, you buy a stock, that's considered to be an equity security. I buy 100 shares of Coca-Cola, I own a little bit of Coca-Cola, right? Trade it every day. What about bonds? Bonds are not equity. Bonds are considered to be debt securities. I buy a bond, I've lent someone money. I buy a government bond, I don't own the government, I've lent them money. Bonds also are traded every single day. Okay, the first one is called Inflation Protection Fund, a bond fund, very safe bond fund trying to give you a hedge against inflation. The Fixed Income Fund, the one in the middle, best way to describe this, it is a huge bond fund. It's got over $6 billion in assets. It is an extremely diversified bond fund, many different types of bonds, government bonds, corporate bonds, government agency bonds, municipal bonds, one big bond fund. The third, the most aggressive of your income fund is the Extended Term Fixed Income Fund. You know it's a bond fund, and the name kind of helps you. Extended term, what does that mean? Bonds with longer durations to maturity tend to pay higher rates of interest. They're going to fluctuate a little bit more, and the goal is to provide a higher rate of monthly income. Those are your 3 bond fund selections. Moving down, getting more aggressive. And if you are self-managing your account, these are the funds that you choose among. Okay? If you choose this next one, this multiple asset fund, I'd say stop right there. Your work is done. Okay, this is a fund made up of the other funds. This is in a category called balanced, a category also I like to refer to as growth and income funds. That's what they're called. Those are the 2 goals of that category. Think of like the scales of justice, the plates. It's a balance. 2 goals. Stocks, the goal is growth. Bonds, on that plate, the goal is income within one fund, okay? So when you pick that multiple asset fund, you're really picking 4 of the other funds, 35% U.S. equity, 30 international, and then 25 bond, fixed income, and 10% the inflation protection fund. That's multiple asset. And then the next category, often described as growth funds. The security best suited for growth is going to be stocks. Okay, very important category in defined contribution plans. These growth fund managers are very clever. They're never going to put all of the money in any one company or one industry. Okay, these are both very large equity stock funds. The name of the fund, and I want to just read a little bit about them. The U.S. Equity Fund, it's a growth fund. You know it's going to buy stocks where it tells you U.S., okay? This fund is big. This fund is huge. This fund has about $6.3 billion in assets. What I find interesting about it is that Westpath will hire about 28 different investment managers to help with the portfolio. It has a really well-diversified portfolio. It's got 42% large companies, 33% U.S. mid-size, about 17% small companies. I like to look at the quarterly fact sheets, which are available on our website, and fund managers are a fun bunch. They will always tell you what they did. They'll never tell you what they're going to do. So the fund fact sheets kind of look back. And I like to look at some of the holdings in the companies, and you would recognize in the U.S. equity fund, these are some of the bigger holdings. Amazon, we've heard of that, right? Jeff Bezos, okay. Microsoft is still around, right? The rich guy, what's his name? Gates. Started the company in his garage, became a big monopoly, got in trouble, still around. Apple, anybody have anything made by Apple among them? Okay. Then you have some financials in there, J.P. Morgan. Berkshire Hathaway, whom is that? Jimmy Buffett, that's right, his brother. Warren Buffett, I'm sorry. Okay, help me with this one. Alphabet, who is that? Google, good. So you got some big techs in there. You got Netflix in there, some financials. So just very diversified, big stock fund. The most aggressive selection in your plan would be the international, okay? You know it's a growth fund. It's going to buy stocks where? Outside of the U.S. Okay, this is also a very big fund. It's got about $4.7 billion in assets, and man, they're never going to take all of the money and say, let's put it in one country today and see what happens. Not a good idea. Nor will they say, let's put it in automobile manufacturing throughout the globe and see how that works out. They will diversify among different countries, different regions, different industries, different size companies to help reduce that risk you are exposed to when you go overseas. International risk, currency risk, market risk. Some of the holdings you might recognize, and it does also have this diversification, small, medium, large. Big holdings, Samsung, where are they? South Korea, right, where the Olympics were. Alibaba, anybody heard of them? Alibaba, that's like the equivalent of
Google.
Amazon.
Amazon.
Right, in China? Okay, so big companies, SoftBank Japan, Royal Dutch, different international companies, large, medium, and small. And that really rounds out your investment lineup. If you're in life stage investment management, it's choosing among those funds. It's diversifying to help reduce risk. That old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket, is a good idea. No, I wouldn't want to see anybody walking around the parsonage saying, Bob, I'm going to go 100% international equity. I heard what you said, and I like that fund, and I'm aggressive, and I want to put all my money there. I'd say, really, Reverend, be careful. Why? You said it was aggressive. I said, be careful with it. Okay, I'd rather, nor would I want to see anybody walking around saying, Bob, I get this. I want safety. I'm going to do 100% self-managed, stable value fund, and I'm going to do that for 30 years. I said, really? Maybe not a good idea. Why? Well, you might barely be keeping up with the rate of inflation. I'd rather see someone self-managing diversify among different selections to help reduce risk. If you're self-managing, you have 3 additional choices. The Social Values Choice suite of funds. 2 of these are fixed income bond funds, and 1 is a equity fund, a stock fund. And this is really for participants with a heightened focus on a company's environmental and social performance. It will take into account resolutions passed by annual conferences as well. So that's really 10 different funds if you're self-managing. Now, if you're sitting here saying, Bob, I really did not enjoy this at all. I don't want to do this. I don't like the investments. I'm, if you're not aware, busy with other things. Maybe life stage investment management is for you, because self-managing is, and I used to do it for a long time. And sometimes I was good at it, sometimes not so good at it. But when I joined the general board and saw about life stage, I said, count me in. Take the burden of self-managing, set it on autopilot. Because if you're self-managing, you got to identify the goal of the fund, your goal. You have to understand the level of risk with each investment. This chart, I really like it. It talks about the relationship, the fundamental relationship between risk and reward with investments. And you can see it's measured. Risk on the bottom, return on the side. What are those things? What is risk with an investment? Yes, the chance of losing money, Bob. You get your statement and you have less money than you did the previous quarter. Your balances are going down. You're seeing fluctuations. You bought Coca-Cola at 20. They made a bad batch of soda. It went down to 10 and you sold it. You lost money. That is risk, fluctuation, potential to lose. What about reward with investments? What is that? Yeah, the opposite, Bob. You make money. Your balances went up. You bought Coke at 20. It went up to 30. You get your statement. Balances went up. The rule, about this relationship is worded very, very carefully. It says, hey, investors, the more risk you're willing to take with your investments, the higher potential you have for reward. What's the word, ma'am? The key word is potential. The rule doesn't say, hey, take more risk, you get more reward. If that were the rule, we'll just figure out which is the most aggressive, put all our money in there, and look for early retirement benefits, right? Much more of a challenge. The good news is that it usually works out very nicely, the rule, over longer periods of time. Short periods of time, you can throw the rule out the window. You might have a week, a month, a quarter, even a year-to-date number where good old stable value or a bond fund is beating everything else. But when you look over the longer-term numbers, it kind of works out. With a lower risk, that's where you've seen the lowest reward. Moderate, somewhere in the middle. Higher risk, that's where you've seen your returns. Yes?
How often does the balance funds rebalance your amounts?
Yeah, if you're in the multiple asset fund, or with, I can actually extend that to if you're in life stage investment management, how often does it do this balance? What it looks at is things are going to drift normally and naturally. When there's a certain tolerance that's exceeded, they'll rebalance. Even on your own personal account, they will rebalance. But for the multiple asset fund, they try to keep it pretty tight with those percentages. They follow it very closely. These are daily valued funds. That means that every day, the value of the securities is calculated and your balances are updated. So if you're inclined, you call up today or go on Benefit Access today to check your balance, and then you call back tomorrow. You might see a different number, depending upon what happened. Sometimes I'll be talking to a clergy and we'll be looking at their statement, and they might see some transactions that occurred. And often I've heard, hey, Bob, I didn't do anything last quarter, and I see my money being moved around. What's going on? I say, I know what's going on. You're in life stage. That is life stage rebalancing your account for you. I'm going to give you an example of that. We've got to talk about benefitaccess.org. Okay, the folks yesterday, I told them you got to register. And a lot of them had already, so I was really happy about that. You all need to register too. And at Westpath, we count everything. And we know how many people haven't registered. And we know why, because we made it very difficult to register. And we admit that. It took us a while, but we admit that. And we fixed that this year. We made, so if you haven't, you're lucky, we made the new user registration process much better, much easier. You don't have to wait to get something in the mail. Because the sooner you get, I'm not saying you got to go on Benefit Access every day, but if you've never gone on, never looked at your balances, never checked your beneficiaries, start to think about this, maybe as follow-up to the seminar. Because the day will come when you have to go on Benefit Access if you want retirement benefits. And we ran a kind of a dual process for a while. We'd send out paper forms and have Benefit Access available, and we switched that over 2 years ago. We said this is not working well with the paper forms, not working well. So the process goes, and we did a demo of it yesterday to show the retirees what those screens look like, and it's not that hard. So you can check out, like I was reading about some of the investments, a lot of information on Benefit Access, transaction detail, quarterly performance pages are in there. I always like to look at, I'm not saying you got to read this, but in general, we have to report to you how these investments have done, and we have to compare them against other similar investments. We like to show you, and in the investment business, you can't guess what's going to happen. We can't tell you, hey, you're going to make 10% next year, but you can look back and measure this quite precisely, and that's what these performance pages do. If you are self-managing, that's fine. If you're in life stage, that's fine. If you're in life stage, you should complete, if you haven't ever, complete a profile where you tell us certain things about you. What is your risk tolerance? Are you conservative? Are you moderate or aggressive? We will assume or default you to moderate if we don't hear from you. We will assume and default you to normal retirement. But you might not be looking at a normal retirement. So you want to let Life Stage know, because we'll use your input to come up with this customized asset allocation. And like the question was, how often do we change it? When it's necessary, we will rebalance your account. And I think that's one of the most beneficial things about Life Stage. It doesn't just come up with this asset allocation and forget about it. It will monitor it and rebalance and scale back your more aggressive investments as you approach that benefit commencement date that you have identified for us. So I think it's just a terrific service. There's no direct cost for this. There's no obligation to stay in it. At any point, if you wanted to get out of Life Stage and you wanted to self-manage your account, that's fine. You can get in and get out at any time. That is just what the profile looks like, where you would indicate, are you conservative? Do you want to keep your money safe? Do you have a higher risk tolerance? Or maybe you're somewhere in the middle, a moderate risk tolerance. You can update these profiles through Benefit Access by filling out a form or by calling up our service center. This is just an example of what this rebalancing feature looks like. We come up with this target allocation. Things will drift. That's normal. We'll rebalance it back to where it was within certain tolerances. Okay. Now let's talk about something fun and exciting. In your folder, there is a housing allowance exclusion worksheet, which looks like this. Looks like kind of like a tax form, but it's not. But it has to do very much with taxes.
I don't have a folder.
You don't have a folder. Do we have any more folders? We do. Help is on the way.
Anybody else like that? Just a second.
All right. Housing allowance exclusion. Again, this is in your retired relationship with the annual conference, not now. The housing allowance exclusion, I can best describe it as a tax break for retired clergy. It is not just for Methodist clergy. It is available to other denominations as well. Okay, we know, and you probably know, that this has been challenged in the courts and upheld. You should know that Westpath is in this fight with you and with other denominations as well, okay, fighting for this, advocating for this. I think it's an important tax break for retired clergy. The best way to describe it would be, in retirement, you're going to get money from Westpath, right? We just talked about a lot of different benefit plans. You're going to get income from Westpath. And to keep it simple, it doesn't matter what plan we're talking about, okay? It's money. Pre-82 money, CRSP defined benefit money, DC money, doesn't matter. It's money. You're going to get money from income. Some of that, maybe all of it, certainly some of it, can be excluded from taxation because of the housing allowance exclusion in retirement. Well, that's a good thing. How much can be excluded? Well, that depends. Depends. You have to look at 3 different considerations. You have to come up with 3 different numbers. And once you've done that, your work is done. It's easy. You just got to identify the lowest of the 3. The first consideration is pretty straightforward, okay? And I've only been around 5 years. At an annual conference, this is voted on. And I've only seen, 100% of what comes out of Westpath is allowed to be excluded. Sounds good. Doesn't mean it will be, it's allowed to be. So that first consideration, that first number is, how much did you get from Westpath? Well, how do you know? You don't guess, we will tell you. We'll report that to you on 1099-Rs. So you get that number, you add it up, you put it in section 1. Indicate the amount that you receive from Westpath. And to keep this easy to follow, I'll say $2,000 a month, $24,000 I'll write in there. Now the second one is, what is the amount actually expended for housing? And that housing would be your primary residence. And a lot of clergy have asked, well, can it be a lake house? Yes. Can it be a trailer? Yes. Can it be a condo? Yes. A single-family home? Yes. It's where you're living. You're probably going to have expenses for that, I would imagine. You need to keep track of expenses in retirement. This should not be your best guess. You should make a bona fide attempt to track expenses so that you can take advantage of this housing allowance exclusion. And if you're ever asked to substantiate it, you'll have good records, okay? So the second one is things like listed. And the EY Financial Planning website has a really nice worksheet as well, I like, and we're in the process of revising this one currently. But what are we looking at for expenses? Well, things like rent payments, mortgage principal payments, interest payments, real estate property taxes, maintenance expenses, utilities, probably going to want those, furnishings, and any other applicable expenses related to housing would qualify. So you've kept track of this, and you add up those numbers. And that's the second consideration. But your work's not done yet. You got one more, and this one's tricky. The third bullet, what is the fair rental value of that housing? Well, I would imagine the house I live in could rent. I don't think that's impossible. I don't know what it would rent for, and I certainly don't know what it would rent for with utilities and furnishings. Don't know. How do you figure this out? Some participants have told me they use websites like Zillow. I can't say it's good or bad. I don't know. I've never used it. Some people have said it's real helpful. Some people have told me there's other websites available as well. I have heard several retired participants tell me this, though. Bob, I was able to get a letter from my local real estate person that I'm friendly with or in my congregation, and they came over and looked at where I'm living, and they looked at comparables around me, whether it's an apartment or a home, whatever area. And they gave me a letter stating this is what your housing could rent for with utilities and furnishings on a monthly and annual basis. I say, really, that's great. I like that letter. That's the best, I think, to have as support for this. So that's the third consideration that you put in here. And then you just identify what's the lowest one, the number. That is the exclusion. And I'll give you two examples. One is quick and easy, and one is more weird and interesting but realistic. Okay? Let's look at the first one together. Just like we said, the numbers. Clergy person getting from Westpath, doesn't matter what plan. They're pulling in $24,000 annually. That's the first number. We're going to report that to you. They've kept good track of expenses, and that come up to be 20. They get the letter from the real estate person, the real estate agent, and it says, on an annual basis, we're looking at $21,000 here. We're done. Which is the lowest of the three numbers? 20. That's the exclusion. So we'll take that off to 24, and the amount subject to taxation, we could do the math, would be $4,000. That's a tax break. That's important. And I've seen some clergy that are very good at taking advantage of this. Okay? Very good. Very good at taking advantage of this. Does that make sense? Now, the second example, and this is very realistic. I did some in February, I was out at EY in Secaucus doing some training for their financial planners, and they said this is a very common consultation topic. Not just, how should I come up with a down payment for the first time on a home? How much can I actually afford on housing in retirement based upon my income? EY can help you with those important decisions. But you have here an example that is looking at two clergy. They happen to be twins, identical twins, and they do everything very similar their whole life. So they're going to be born on the same date, but they do everything, appointments, plan compensation, UMPIP. They're going to retire on the same date. Okay, they had made exactly the same investments. They're going to buy identical homes on the same block in the same town. Strange, right? Clergy twin A, clergy twin B. And they come to a seminar. Very good. And they both listen and take notes. But they both interpret things differently. And they both are thinking of ways to come up with this down payment. They both have been in parsonages. And one clergy twin A, example A, says, that guy from Westpath, he said I could take out a partial distribution. And I did say that. And they did that. They took out $40,000 from one of their DC accounts. And clergy twin example B says, wait a minute, he also said there's other options available. He mentioned a loan provision. He mentioned it might not be a bad thing to have a small mortgage in retirement. He said there's other options. I'm going to do something else. I'm not taking out $40,000. They both fill out the worksheet, and they compare it, and it's the same because they do everything alike. They had the exact same expenses, even for utilities. So that's weird. Okay, and that amount was $25,000. They both are getting the same income from Westpath, $21,600, and they both have the exact same fair rental value because, let's face it, the houses are quite similar, okay? What is different here, or the bottom line here in this example, this strange example, is that clergy twin example A, the amount subject to taxation is $37,600. Not a terrible thing, but why? Where did that come from? Because they took out the big distribution. Clergy example twin B, the amount subject to taxation, 0. Okay? Now, paying taxes is not the worst thing, but there's ways to kind of avoid it. That might have been, if they weren't twins, the only option for that person to do. And that's not a bad thing. Get the home. That's the important thing. Make the calls to EY, because there's different ways to approach this, different ways to do it. And it's complex, and EY can help you with that. And this is a tax break available to retired clergy. Does not continue to the surviving spouse unless they happen to also be clergy. We had a clergy couple yesterday, so that would continue. Interesting. We suggest you attach a note to your tax return, whether you're filing paper or like a TurboTax, there's usually a spot for a note. And just to give you an example of what the note should be, and the reason you want to do the note, if someone at the IRS is looking, reading, an auditor perhaps, looking at your return, and you attach this note, they're going to know you mean business, okay? But you're going to say it nicely. You're going to say, hello, I received $24,000 from Westpath, the UMC Benefit Board, as reported on the attached 1099-Rs. I did not include, let's say, $20,000 of this amount online. It's not 16B, but whatever it is, because it has been excluded under provisions of Section 107 of the Internal Revenue Code as a housing allowance exclusion. Furthermore, as a United Methodist Church clergy person, I am entitled to take this housing allowance exclusion. Thank you very little, and move on. Okay? They're going to say, wow, retired Methodist clergy person, mentioned Section 107. Sounds good, move on. Okay? Does that make sense? No. Questions? Yeah.
So what if you're an example where, in our case, where both spouses are pastors?
Okay.
And we'll be receiving some money from Westpath. Could that be combined, or does that have to be looked at separately?
Combined.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's a good tax break. It is likely to be challenged. Again, I would imagine these folks aren't going away that are challenging it, but we'll fight, and we'll keep you posted on the status of it. Okay, a little bit about death and disability. We have about 8 minutes or so, which we're doing pretty well. I'm not going to go through every death and disability program for active clergy. There is a complete schedule of benefits in your folder. I do want to focus a little bit on the death benefit for active clergy. $50,000 for the clergy person, and percentages of the DAC for spouse, surviving spouse, and eligible children. You might, and the folks yesterday might continue to have a death benefit in retirement if you're eligible to receive such a benefit. What would make you eligible? Either 25 years of total CPP participation, or for those retiring 2019, 12 of the last 15 years, you're eligible to receive a death benefit. These amounts are flat dollar amounts. Same categories: clergy, spouse, surviving spouse, eligible child. Our disability program is real important. You know, we do have clergy on disability. A couple of things, I think that last bullet is certainly important. You will receive retirement plan credit during the period of the disability. That is really important. It's bad enough you're disabled. You wouldn't want to lose out on creditable service used to calculate your defined benefit. You can't make more money disabled than you were when you weren't. Okay, so it has to be 70% of plan comp, coordinated offset with any Social Security disability benefit. There's an application and an approval process. I like this because it helps people. You also are going to have financial needs, access to that 35% of MPP if needed, your DC balance of CRISP, as well as your 100% of your UMPIP. Especially for young clergy, I remember taking a CFP class on risk management, and it talked a lot about insurance, and it talked a lot about disability. And for young people, the chance of you becoming disabled is greater than you dying. So these disability programs really become real important.
Bob, can you back up a few slides to go back one more? If you want to know whether you are eligible for the CPP participation, you can talk to any of the board members about what the policy is, and we'd be happy to talk about that.
Excellent. Thanks, Reverend Michelle. I mentioned a couple of times beneficiaries. Obviously during your active ministry, you want to keep this updated. You can do so right on benefit access. It's important to update this especially if there's a change. If you got married, if you got divorced, if you're widowed, if you had a child, if you adopted a child, you always want to keep this current. Typically, you're going to find the spouse is usually the sole and primary 100% beneficiary, and then children could be listed, or other heirs could be listed as contingent or secondary in the event something happens to you and the spouse. That's where it's going to go. The contingent could also be an estate or a charity. I've seen most clergy are pretty good with this. The ones I've looked at anyway, I'll see the spouse is correct, and I'm happy, that's good. I'll see the children as contingent or secondary, that's good. Sometimes the children's addresses aren't always updated because the kids might have a tendency to move around a bit. We will find them, but if you get a chance, make sure that looks good and put their current addresses in there.
Friends, especially if you're single,
Yeah.
in a room, that's super duper important.
It is, for sure. I mentioned EY a couple of times. Good stuff about EY. There is a booklet describing EY's services. Anybody ever called EY? Nice. All right, good. Anybody ever gone on EY's financial planning website? Wow, even better. Excellent. I'm a big fan of EY. I've met a lot of the planners. I met a lot of the key people at EY. And, about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, I guess now, we have to do our due diligence. We've had a relationship with EY for a long time. We have to put it out to bid, make sure there's not somebody that can do this better or lower cost. And we did that, and it was not easy. You'll find very quickly when you put out these proposals, there's not a lot of players in this arena. Okay, there's some, though, and we got some bids back, and EY just kind of blew them all away. They really did. And I mentioned, I had the chance to go out. They asked, hey, Bob, would you mind coming out and doing some Westpath training for the financial planners? And I said, that's great. You have an office in Secaucus and Tampa. I'll start with Tampa. Why don't I do that? And they said, no, we just want you to go to Secaucus. I said, really? I said, all right, I'll drive out there. It's not far. It's about 60 miles from my house, so all right. Doesn't matter. But that's not my point. What was my point? I got to listen, and it was about 21 trainers, about 3 hours. We talked. We went through Westpath, the general agency structure, the structure of the church, and they shared with me a lot of really important things, and one of the things they told me is that they love you guys as participants. I mean, they deal with corporations too, but they said great things about our participants and the blessings that they have received and the thanks they have received. Just you're terrific people, they said. A couple things I like about EY is that it's confidential, and it's objective, and it's unlimited, and there's no direct costs for clergy. And confidential is really important to me and participants. If you have a discussion with them about something personal, like you're thinking of retiring, you haven't told anybody, it stays there. It doesn't go anywhere else. They don't tell us. They tell us broadly the topics that they're talking to you about, but they're never going to say specifically, this reverend called and they said this, this, and that. No, they won't do that. And at Westpath, we do like to count things. So we know how many people call, how many people use the website, and we have, as one of our 560 corporate goals, agency goals, is to increase EY utilization. Okay, we constantly want more people to utilize them. And I'll just tell you a quick story about confidential. I had tried to trick them a little bit when I was going out to Secaucus. Not because I was mad I had to go, but I said, hey, EY folks, wouldn't it be nice if when Bob is out here in Secaucus, beautiful Secaucus, that I could spend several hours listening in on phone calls so I will get a flavor for what the clergy participants are speaking to you about? Wouldn't that be nice? And I have time, I'll make time. And they didn't fall for it. They said, no, Bob, that would not be a good idea, and you're well aware of this, that these calls are confidential. And I said, well done, EY, because if they had said, oh yeah, we'll hook you up, here's a headset, they would have been in big trouble, okay? So it was kind of a little trick, but they passed, and they do really great work. And I don't want anyone to think that, I'm going to go through this quick. It's not limited to Westpath retirement topics. It could be anything. Housing allowance exclusion, best way to make a down payment. Should you be doing Roth or thinking about Roth? How much are you contributing? Asset allocation. It can include your spouse in these topics. Estate planning, retirement planning, reducing debt. They do have some great webinars. I'm a big fan of their website. We've done some training on their website. I am registered on their website. They have 4 big sections with a lot of detail. There's nothing in here no topic that you could not find on their website. There's worksheets, there's calculators. I mentioned the housing allowance exclusion worksheet. It's a terrific website, and I don't know if you can notice, but on the screen print I did, it talks about a webinar they had in November that I joined, and the topic was refinancing student loans. So they have these constantly updated these webinars that you can join. And this is all at no cost to you. And this is really, I think, a state-of-the-art financial planning website. A couple of things we're going to wrap this up with, because I think we're right on time. Just, takeaway items. I'll be brief. You need to register for benefit access if you haven't already. It's easy now to do. Think about your contributions to UMPIP. Think about UMPIP in terms of making a difference in your retirement income. Think about your investment strategy. If you are self-managing, when's the last time you checked? When's the last time you reallocated? If you're in life stage, have you ever completed a profile? It would be good for you to do that. Look at your benefit projections. Run your own benefit projection. I'll be real brief, but the one that you have in your hands talks about the different plans and projected income at a very specific date on the top of page 1. That date is your normal retirement. If that has passed, it's the next July 1. Assumptions I make on that might not be correct. I assume you will continue to make UMPIP contributions at the same rate as identified on page 2. I assume that if you have a spouse, you want to provide a life and 70% survivor benefit. That might not be what you want. I assume you're going to have a 2% COLA in each plan. You might want to pick something else. So that is just a tool that you can use to run your own projection, perhaps at a different date in time, maybe a year later, you'll see those numbers change. Maybe with a higher UMPIP contribution, that would change, maybe with a different survivor benefit. It's a great tool. That's a retirement income projection. There's also a retirement expense, retirement readiness tool on our website.